In Acts chapter 7, we read that Stephen, a young leader in the early church, was falsely accused of blasphemy and put on trial. As he was questioned by the high priest, Stephen answered the council members boldly. Most of Acts chapter 7 recounts Stephen's address to the council in defense of himself. What's interesting is that the majority of his address involves a concise retelling of Israel's history, beginning with the patriarchs and continuing through until the time of Solomon. This was customary for a defendant on trial for blasphemy, since the defendant needed to establish that his teaching and doctrine were orthodox and not heretical. Through Stephen's address, he clearly establishes that his understanding of God's relationship with Israel is orthodox. But more than that, he also shows through his address that although Israel had received the law and covenants of God, they had not kept it throughout their history. This fact included the council members themselves. Stephen concluded his address by confronting the council members with their hypocrisy and their complicity in the murder of Jesus. This caused the council members to drown out Stephen's words by raising their own voices and covering their ears. Perhaps what they said rang too true, and they just couldn't bear to hear or to face the truth. We read that immediately they took Stephen out and they unjustly stoned him to death. What's perhaps most striking about Stephen's testimony before the council is that while he demonstrates his orthodoxy in recounting Israel's testimony, he does this not to gain their approval, but to confront them. This is not a man attempting to prove his innocence so that he may go free. Rather, this is a prophet of God confronting apostate Israel, just as the Old Testament prophets had done. Ironically, the scribes and Pharisees were cessationists, teaching that the day of the prophets had passed. Remember that this is why Jesus had earlier told them, "Therefore the wisdom of God also said, I will send them apostles and prophets, and some of them they will kill and persecute." Here we see Jesus' words fulfilled in part through Stephen's unjust murder. We see then that the call of Christ's church is a prophetic confrontation. Just like these early church leaders, you and I, as 21st century witnesses of the grace of God, must boldly proclaim the gospel, not as a means of accommodating the world, but of confronting it.